We'll tell the Greek people they should vote favourably. So finally, an agreement with our partners will have the okay from the Greek people. This should help the implementation of such an agreement too. I need to leave now. Goodbye.
Watching CNN, and that was the Greek Finance Minister, Yanis Varoukis, speaking about the Greek debt talks with the EU. This, of course, comes just days before Greece is meant to pay back 1.6 billion euros to the IMF. Now, we have Elinda Labropouolou standing by for more on this. Elinda, you were just listening to Varoukis speak, and also the president of the EU. Where do these talks stand right now?
Well, at the moment, there seems to be a complete deadlock. I mean, the two are heading in different directions, but Mr. Varoukis seems to have left a little bit of a window when he was referring to an invitation by Tuesday to Greek voters, if there was a different proposal, if things were different, to come back and vote in support of the EU. But this is all, you know, just things that we just heard just now. Overall, he seemed to be quite, in the beginning, quite condescending of the way the Eurozone has handled Greece. He seemed to be quite upset about this meeting going on without him, saying, you know, this does not do much good. It's not good for the unity of the European Union and the Eurozone. So I think what we've seen a little bit from both sides is a bit of a blame game that, oh, we were the ones trying, but the other side wasn't. And of course, that's never a very good indication of an improvement of relations anytime soon.
And of course, the Greek Finance Minister continues to play hardball. And as we just heard him say there, he seems to be passing the buck on to the Greek people, saying they will decide when this referendum happens next Sunday.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, this is also what the Greek Prime Minister suggested with this referendum last night. Some would think that this may be a good way of addressing an impasse that has gone on for so long. Others would just suggest that they're passing on the responsibility to the Greek people instead of the government. And of course, there is a big question here, because this is a government that was never elected to, it does not have the mandate to take the country out of the Eurozone. It was never elected on those principles. It was elected with the idea to try and get Greece out of so much austerity and improve the living standards for Greeks. And of course, with everything that's going on, it remains extremely unclear how they'd be able to do that.
Certainly unclear. Stand by, Elinda. We just want to have a look at some pictures of Greeks who have been standing in long lines around ATMs across the country. They're afraid of what could happen if Greece defaults on its bailout payment to the IMF, which of course is due on Tuesday. The head of the Eurogroup sounded pretty grim just a short time ago when he spoke.
The situation in Greece will deteriorate very rapidly. There is no time to take that long. The Greek authorities have asked for a month extension. But in that month, there can be no disbursements. The program is still not on track. How does the Greek government think it will survive and deal with its problems in that period? I do not know.
You can just hear there, he doesn't seem to want to weigh into how this will play out for Greece, but these are going to be really difficult times. I mean, could we see possibly a financial implosion in Greece?
Hard to say at this point, because this is all very new, but certainly the indications are not good. The questions around the banking system remain. They're fundamental to what happens next. We have to wait and see what the ECB decides tomorrow in terms of the further liquidity assistance to the Greek banks. And of course, once Greece finds itself out of the current program, it does not have access to the markets. It does not have a way of financing itself. So I'm afraid to say that Mr. Dijsselbloem certainly has a point.
Okay, Elinda Labropouolou, thanks very much for joining us. We're going to continue on this topic. We have another journalist standing by in Athens, Polyzoidis, who joins us via Skype. Panos, can you just explain for us what the feeling is in Greece right now? There must be a lot of fear right now as people try to withdraw as much money as they can from the banks.
Yes, it all began after midnight last night, and you could see queues in front of ATMs at the banks, and you could also see, you can still see queues at gas stations, particularly in Athens. Some of the machines are short of cash by now, and that's quite understandable because there's such strong demand. So you can't say there is panic, but there is certainly a certain degree of fear.
Obviously, we just heard the Greek finance ministers speaking, along with the EU president, who didn't want to weigh into how this may play out. What do you think will happen next Sunday when the Greeks go to this referendum to vote?
Well, it all depends. You just heard Varoukis, the finance minister, say that the negotiation will go on, and it all depends on how it will end. I'm afraid he's not a lawyer, and I'm not sure it's quite clear in his mind that the parliament will call a referendum today, will vote on calling a referendum today on a particular deal. It will not call a referendum on just any deal he may end up with within the next couple of days. So, in fact, the deal that Greek people will be invited to decide on is the one offered by the European Union and the IMF just yesterday. But in any case, there are so many unpredictable factors that will play. For instance, crucially, will the banks open on Monday? It's absolutely clear now, or almost absolutely clear, that the emergency liquidity assistance will stop on Wednesday, but it's very likely that it will stop immediately. So Monday we'll see the banks probably running out of cash. That will obviously make Tsipras, the Prime Minister's, life a bit more difficult. He will have to go to the polls, he will have to go to the country with the banks closed, and this is probably a nightmare for any Prime Minister. And I think he may resort to some extreme populist rhetoric in order to counter that, if that materializes. It's make or break the banks. People will get paid their pensions and their wages, and they will not be able to withdraw any money out of their bank accounts.
We just had the Greek finance minister saying that they will advise people how to vote depending on how these talks play out over the next couple of days. You're talking about the Prime Minister and what he may face depending on how this plays out in the banks. What's his current standing like among the people in Greece right now?
I think right now people have not quite precisely realized, we haven't either, what the position will be in the next couple of days. I have a feeling that there is probably a majority that would support a no vote, would support the government in rejecting the deal offered by the European Union and the IMF. But as I said, a lot of things can play as factors within the next few days, and particularly the liquidity, the banks. With the banks closed and people running out of money, then I'm not really sure how they would react.
Stay with us, Panos. We just want to have a look at the debt burden. It is absolutely enormous. The figures for 2015 alone are staggering. Since January, it has paid more than $17 billion to its lenders, but it's not even halfway done for the year. Upcoming payments until December add up to another $20 billion. Clearly, Greece is has a lot of money it owes right now, and it seems it doesn't have this cash.
Absolutely not. No, it doesn't have that cash. And frankly, if the government managed to put together that cash somehow, it would keep it to pay wages and pensions instead of returning it, instead of repaying loans. I think to some extent Tsipras has entrapped himself in his own rhetoric. He has been saying for years and years and years that Greeks should not suffer this deterioration of their living standard in order to repay loans. And I think he's really not in a position to do exactly that just now. So right now, So no, I think we're looking at a failure to repay some of those loans. Now, whether that technically will be deemed a default or not, that remains to be seen.
How are the Greek people feeling about whether there will be an exit from the EU?
I think, in fact, the real question in this referendum is exactly what you just said. It's not about agreeing to a deal or rejecting a particular deal. The real question is about whether Greece is to stay a part of the European family and part of the Eurozone or not. The modern Greek state has a life of 200 years. Throughout these years, despite wars and famines and all the turbulence that the whole world has experienced in the 20th century and the 19th century, the movement was steadily towards the West. If Greece were to leave the Eurozone, it would be the first time in its 200-year history that it would move back away from the West. I think it will be of historical proportions for the country, and frankly, yes, we cannot really gauge and we cannot really predict what the implications will be for the European project as a whole.
Huge concerns there. Panos, Polyzoidis, we really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope to speak to you again very soon. Thank you. How are the Greek people feeling about whether there will be an exit from the EU?
I think, in fact, the real question in this referendum is exactly what you just said. It's not about agreeing to a deal or rejecting a particular deal. The real question is about whether Greece is to stay a part of the European family and part of the Eurozone or not. The modern Greek state has a life of 200 years. Throughout these years, despite wars and famines and all the turbulence that the whole world has experienced in the 20th century and the 19th century, the movement was steadily towards the West. If Greece were to leave the Eurozone, it would be the first time in its 200-year history that it would move back away from the West. I think it will be of historical proportions for the country, and frankly, yes, we cannot really gauge and we cannot really predict what the implications will be for the European project as a whole.
Huge concerns there. Panos, Polyzoidis, we really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope to speak to you again very soon. Thank you.